Right, we couldn't see him, but we could hear him. So we walked up, and probably 5 to 7 minutes of Trump speaking. I'm estimating here. I have no idea, But we noticed the guy crawling, bear crawling up the roof of the building beside us, 50 feet away from us. So we're standing there, we're pointing at the guy crawling up the roof.
And he had a gun, right?
He had a rifle. We could clearly see him with a rifle. Absolutely. We're pointing at him. The police are down there running around on the ground. We're like, hey, man.
So what's going on, folks? World is full of craziness. But that's not really anything new. Man, it's really hard. Hard to talk with that thing, man. It's like it gives you a bizarre echo.
But we could hear him. So we walked up, and probably 5 to 7 minutes of Trump speaking. I'm estimating here. I have no idea, But we noticed the guy crawling,
Man, guy's got a weird haircut. So I just wrapped up a podcast. I'll link to it later on. But I just wrapped up a podcast with my friend Dawood, and we were, amongst many things, we were talking about, well, for the last couple of weeks I've been talking about the French philosopher Jean Baudrillard. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Been talking about him and the idea of living in a simulation. Now, of course, when people think about living in a simulation, they think like, oh, you're living in a computer simulation. But that is not exactly what Baudrillard had in mind. But instead, what he had the idea was, as opposed to what they attempted to kind of portray in the Matrix, was this idea of living in a construct, so to speak. And it doesn't have to be a construct inside of a computer or something like that. But living in a construct in which people can no longer differentiate real from a facsimile or a copy of the real. So his book, Simulacra and Simulation, right? These two, right? The first being a copy of a copy. A simulacra is actually a copy of a copy, and then simulation, which is a copy of a reality or an attempt to recreate or reenact actual reality. And so when we see this stuff going on here, many people were like, oh, see, we're living in a reality. We're living in a simulation. Now, what's funny is, that's why I put this little picture down there, as you can see. Maybe this way. There's a mirror here. Let me flip it around. Let's see, transform, flip horizontal. Now, there we go. So the little graphic I put in here, the one was, I guess when this thing jumped off, Trump, I guess for whatever reason, CNN was saying that he fell down some steps, which I think is amusing. And they actually ran with that for a while. And so, and I'm not saying this because I defend any of these people. I'm not actually a really big Joe Rogan fan. So I'm not saying this to defend Joe Rogan. But it's interesting that for a while there, anybody that challenged the popular narrative, especially on things like the C word, were banned, were ostracized, and were labeled as purveyors of misinformation. And so that's why they said the media, people like Joe Rogan and podcasters spread health misinformation, but also the media. CNN Politics says Secret Service rushes Trump off stage after he falls at rally. Even though the picture clearly depicted him with a bloodied face. Now, things have taken another interesting twist in our simulation, in our simulacra, and that is this notion that it was all staged. We've all heard this, right? It's all been staged. Trump didn't get shot. He took that little blood capsule and he smashed it on his face like an old WWF match. So, yeah, he did like an old Iron Sheik move where he smashed the blood capsule on his face. And I do find it interesting that when Alex Jones, who I believe is wrong, when he was portraying the Sandy Hook massacre as fake and the people were actors, and of course he got sued, and rightfully so. I mean, what he said was extremely harmful, mean, and I mean, those people's children that were buried in the ground were not actors. So I thought that was horrible. But, of course, he was the controversial conservative figure that everybody loved to hate. So, and he kind of brought it upon himself. It all came crashing down on him like a ton of bricks. And so he was censored, he was ostracized. But now we find the liberal camp coming out and saying, oh, it was all staged, even though somebody in the audience caught a bullet. So like my friend Daoud said, you know, you can have a psyop in which real people lose their lives, but it can still be a psyop. I mean, I do find it, there's some definite irregularities that beg the question of how did it all unfold. So obviously there was, you know, how did the Secret Service not more thoroughly vet the area? That seems to me like there were some real holes in their whole setup. And then the dude, like, you know, there's not only the redheaded dude, but apparently there's another video of a bunch of people trying to tell the police, like, hey, there's some dude up on the roof. And then there's that odd video of the sniper who, I guess the Secret Service sniper, who was preparing to shoot, but it has the appearance that the guy was like waiting to return fire. Like he was like waiting for the shot to go off first and then to shoot. So there's crazy. A number of very odd and bizarre occurrences. Crazy. Crazy. What else is going on in the Twitter verses? I like this. So Stu Peters, not really sure who this guy is, but sometimes he says, if not pro-Palestinian things, certainly he's anti-Zionism. So he shows this pic of, what's the guy's name here? J.D. Vance. Right, so he showed, number one, there's this picture of J.D. Vance at the Wailing Wall. If you can see that. And so, concerned citizen on Twitter is like, why do they all do this? Because they have to. Another one by somebody named Ray is like, what the F is this? So there's a picture, or rather a video, of with again J.D. Vance there with looks to be some Hasidic Jews. This is carried out on a stretcher. So this is his pick or alleged pick for VP, and then yeah. So anyway, they're picking him apart. Caitlin Johnstone, she has some interesting things to say on her Twitter feed. She writes, all these Democrats wishing Trump a speedy recovery after years of calling him an existential threat are the same people who now treat George W. Bush like a cuddly, wuddly, snuggly poo after years of calling him an evil dictator. The enmity between these factions is a performance. Like cage fighters who hug warmly after weeks of trash talking once their match is over and admit all the drama was really just about promoting the fight and selling pay-per-views. Their actions show you that their conflicts are fake and they're no more enemies than actors on the stage are enemies. So why should you treat their performance as real? Real versus hyper-real. Where you, as Baudrillard says, could no longer distinguish between the original or the real and the simulation of the real, and particularly the simulation of the real. Why buy into the drama of their pretended elections and feigned opposition when they themselves do not? They're showing you it's all fake. Believe them. I believe them. Oh, what the heck? Let's throw the IG in here. See if it'll let us do it. Alright, let's go and change this to the mini player. So we can move this aside. So that was all I was saying. So Caitlin Johnstone says, like, you know, why should you treat their actions as real when they're all just selling pay-per-view tickets? It's hard to argue with that. She continues by saying their actions show you that their conflicts are fake, and they're no more enemies than actors on the stage are enemies. So why should you treat their performance as real? Why buy into the drama of their pretended elections and feigned opposition when they themselves do not? They're showing you it's all fake. Believe them. That seems pretty reasonable. The two sides, and she puts sides in quotes, of mainstream politics are not fighting against one another. They're only fighting against you. Their only job is keeping you clapping along with the two-handed puppet show as they rob you blind and tighten your chains while your gaze is fixed on the performance. That's from Caitlin Johnstone. Like I said, she often has some interesting things to say on her Twitter channel. Yeah, that was horrible, man. Palestinian with Down syndrome left to die by Israeli soldiers after combat dog attack. See, this is what Brother Dawood and I were talking about a little bit earlier when we were discussing one of Baudrillard's points. Let me see if I can bring that up on the iPad here really quick, because I would like to reference what he had to say. See if I can find his specific point. So yeah, one of the things, or one of the characteristics of the postmodern society and of hyper-reality, right? Again, this is Baudrillard's term, is how all of this technology is employed to enhance the believability of this new medium. So he says, due to the believability of the of this new medium, this new culture, it began to answer the previous questions that the traditional culture would have provided, but with a new level of authority never seen before. And what is he talking about here? So in traditional cultures, the big questions in life, right? The big questions in life, like, what is a good life? How should you live your life? What is beautiful? What is ugly? What is good? What is bad? What is the meaning of life? All of those were answered by religion with a lowercase r. So I'm not specifically talking about Islam here, but Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, like pre-modern man, his religion was what informed him of these, the answers to these questions. Whereas now in the hyper-modern context, in post-modernity, in hyper-reality, the new medium, the new media that's what's going to provide you the answer, or actually gives you the illusion you can make it up. So what is the good life? Whatever you want it to be. So when we used to say, well, what is a man and what is a woman? Where in the traditional context, in the pre-modern context, a man was whatever religion said a man was, and a woman was whatever religion said a woman was. And then in the modern context, a man, and this is just talking about gender, right? In the modern context, whatever constituted the definition of a man would have come from, partially from religion, but it also would have come from science. So a man and what constituted a man would have been shared between what was dictated by traditional religion as well as by science. So whatever genitalia that you had in between your legs, that is what you were. Then in the postmodern context, that's where there is the severing of both, as what both Baudrillard and as I've talked before about Paul C. Vitz, who is, or I think he's still alive, is a Catholic, he's a Catholic academic who's done a lot of writing, a lot of actually really beneficial writing about postmodernity. What they talked about, the severing of grand narratives. There's no longer any grand narrative to anything. And so, when we would ask the questions of, well, what should a man be, or what should a good look like, that's all up for grabs. So he said this explosion of this new mass-produced culture, which rejected the old culture, became known as modernism. But now, by the mid-20th century, an entire generation has been brought up surrounded by mass-produced images, advertisement. That's what we talked about Bernays, right? Freud's nephew, who worked with the CIA, who worked with government, and produced, right, and just bombarded the population with imagery that now conveyed with a new level of unspoken authority what were the answers to those big questions. So Baudrillard continues that we are surrounded and bombarded by culture that is now part of our daily lives, our daily reality. So this includes, right, all the videos you watch on YouTube, the adverts that you drive past on your way to work, the magazines you read, every meme on TikTok and every Instagram post. All of them are just as much as part of your reality as the trees and the birds that you see, or the cars that pass by your window. Right? This is what constitutes the postmodern world. And this is why we are so, as he talks about it, we're bombarded, right? Which is a military term, right? A bombardment, like you're literally having bombs dropped on you, except in this case, the bombs are images. But at the same time, there's a difference between being shelled by a tank or something. This kind of bombardment is also bombarding you with a new type of authority, one for the postmodern mind will willingly and blindly accept as authoritative. And it's true. And this results, as I said, in what Baudrillard calls the meaning implosion. I think this has a lot to do with Trump's appeal. Not that he gives people meaning, but he gives them enough simulation of meaning, that those people that have been unable, or as I would say, disabled, like dis-able, they have been disabled from being able to craft their own meaning, or to inherit at least the core substances that would constitute meaning from their ancestors, from their religious tradition. They've been so robbed of that and perhaps don't even know that they've been robbed of it, that when you take an individual like Trump that comes along and is willing to feign the lending of an ear to their woes, to their problems, then he's able to, how can I put it? He's able to concoct meaning for them. It's not real, genuine meaning, but they have the semblance of some type of meaning. Anyway, I'm gonna flip it back around now, because now that I've pointed to that, flip horizontal. Gotta have the D pointed in the right direction. Johnstone continues, Trumpism is an essential component of U.S. imperial narrative management at this point in history. Because without it, it would be way too obvious to way too many people that Washington is run by two parties that aren't meaningfully different in terms of advancing agendas that people with real power actually care about. Trumpism, along with its mirror of the Bernie AOC progressive Democrats, tricks Americans into thinking the electoral process still works, and they really do have some degree of control over the country. So real revolutionary measures are not necessary. Sure, there's an establishment faction of your preferred party, but look, there's also an exciting populist faction you can get behind. Yeah, I appreciate Caitlin's. You can find her, Caitlin Johnstone. She has some interesting things to say from time to time. Wall Street Apes writes, the Donald Trump assassination attempt was the bullet that woke up the younger generation. This girl believed all the lies. Now she's awake. Well, let's see, what does she have to say here?
Yesterday would have been like, if that bullet would have hit, if Trump would not have turned his head. You could call my mother a conspiracy theorist. She has been studying our government for years now. And I mean not doing quick Google searches. I mean, this woman has dedicated a lot of her time to figuring out who is really running this place we're living. The past 6 years I've been like, nah, Mom, that's crazy. Some of the stuff I'm like, no. There's no way that's real. We totally went to the moon. 9/11 was totally real. I can honestly say, from someone that talks about what is going on in this country every single day, the past 6 months, the stars are all aligning, the dots are all connected. We have been lied to. People that we have, quote unquote, been.
I mean, I agree that we've been lied to. Although, I don't know about the stars part. Why do they always have to go to shirk? The stars are aligning. Why do people always have to go to shirk? I don't get it. Yes, so that's interesting. She's awake now. Another account that I follow, Just a Thought, writes, Americans who have been lied to their entire lives about war, inflation, bailouts, debt, global warming, the Federal Reserve, politics, democracy, healthcare, elections, freedom, international relations, and pandemics are 100% convinced they are not being lied to this time. This time, it's different. I've always wondered about this brother, man. I don't really know a lot about him. I know a little bit about his history. Seems sometimes a little bit contentious, but he pops up on my feed a lot. Shahid Bolson. So he wrote, just FYI, it is illegal according to U.S. law for America to provide weapons to Israel. But, you see, they only enact rules like the Leahy Law to imply that they are in compliance with them, precisely because They are not.
Crazy. I love protests. Crazy.
Oh boy, here we go.
Myself, the elites were right about Donald Trump, right? I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him.
He's the best president of my lifetime.
Let me run these back.
As somebody who doesn't like Trump, myself, the elites were right about Donald Trump, right? I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him.
He's the best president of my lifetime. He revealed the corruption in this country like nobody else.
I can't stomach Trump. I think that he's noxious and is leading the white working class to a very dark place. I think that he was a good president. I think he made a lot of good decisions for people.
I take it you're not a Trump supporter from what I've read. Am I right? Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I didn't vote for Trump.
All around, he's a great president. I'm 37 years old. Certainly the best president of my lifetime.
Wow.
Somebody
Now this is the guy apparently that some are saying that he's going to pick as his running mate. This would be his VP, J.D. Vance. Hey, why not? I mean, his inconsistency is consistent with politics and with the elite. Why not?
This is like crazy. Crazy.
So this one, Mossad agent wearing a Kabbalah bracelet.
Crazy. Get him out.
For those of you who can see.
Crazy. Get out of here. Get him out. Crazy. Who's protesting? Anybody? Crazy. Are you from Mexico? Crazy. Get him out. Crazy.
Unbelievable.
Are you from Mexico? Crazy. Punch him in the face.
Well, I think this is good enough for a Ambient.X reading of the news.
Are you from Mexico?
We will see you guys in the next one.
Get him out. Crazy. Do I hear somebody else? Crazy. This is like, man. Crazy. In the good old days. Crazy. Crazy. I don't want anybody to get hurt. Punch him in the face. Crazy. Man, this is like crazy. Crazy.